Hey everybody, welcome back. This is English 1C week number 3. I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple documents today. They are in some ways difficult, but most importantly, there's a lot of stuff in them, and I want to make sure that you're pinpointing exactly what I need you to know. At this time, we are currently 1/4 of the way done with the course. The first kind of unit focuses obviously on Black literature. We are going to read more texts by Black writers, but it's going to be looking at them through a different lens and not just a kind of a cultural lens. That being said, we are not done talking about these issues, but we are shifting gears. We are going to be focusing on economics, Marxist literary theory. Essentially, what Marxism is in terms of literature and Marxist theory, it's this idea that literature demands to be viewed through a lens of kind of the haves and the have-nots. So it's this idea that some texts are written with this in mind, and even the texts that are not written with this in mind do have elements of kind of the rich versus the poor inherently in them. Now, that being said, I wanted to kind of take a look at some documents. I wanted to emphasize a couple different things too. I'm not sure, obviously everyone looks at these Canvas courses a little bit differently. But when you are looking at my class, I want to re-emphasize that you want to go to the modules and everything is always laid out for you like this. So if we go down to the week 3 module, you'll notice that I have all these documents for you. You're looking at 3 texts this week: F. Scott Fitzgerald, Shirley Jackson, Oscar Wilde. Those are your fiction texts. And then 2 nonfiction documents. And primarily what I want to focus on right now is those nonfiction documents. I already have them opened up, so I'm going to go ahead and go there. It's these 2 documents right here. And I want to start with the Marxist Literary Criticism, a brief guide. So now, this document kind of gives you the basics, and what I'm interested in here in terms of kind of capturing is hegemony and ideology. An ideology is a shared belief or value, as the definition says, but more importantly, it's kind of a way of seeing the world. When you're reading the text for this week, you want to think about how these 3 writers are presenting their thoughts on kind of the rich versus the poor through their literature. What is their ideology? What are their beliefs about humankind? So these texts kind of, to me, have 2 layers. The first layer is they're definitely texts about rich, middle, lower classes. The second layer is there is a question of whether humans are inherently naturally good or are we naturally bad? Are we greedy? Are we selfish? Are we selfless? That's kind of the question that a lot of these texts over the next 2 weeks will be focusing on. Okay, hegemony is this idea, which the definition's right here. It's this idea that essentially every single system of people has a kind of a dominant belief system or a dominant value discourse. So in America, for instance, in terms of religion, Christianity is the dominant religion. It is the most common religion. In terms of politics, the 2 kind of political parties, right? Republican and Democrats. Those are the 2 dominant parties. When you look at these texts, they're going to be basically asking you to rethink what your view of kind of power is, looking at it in a more, how do I want to say it? In a way that is not just about political systems, but rather about the rich versus the middle versus the poor, this constant game of tug of war, as I describe in my PowerPoint, and that all these political systems and these economic systems and even the way we view education is all a consequence of the fundamental issue, which is haves versus have-nots. In media and in news and even just kind of in the last century, this is often called like class warfare. It's this idea that maybe it's a bad thing to talk about these things, that we shouldn't paint the rich against the poor. That's kind of your decision in terms of what you believe about kind of the goodness or badness of billionaires and all this stuff. But it's an interesting idea nonetheless. Now, in this document, we have this question. It's at the very end of the first page, and I want to make sure that you see it, that says, what do Marxist literary critics do with the text? And right here are these answers. Okay, we want to look at, in the 3 texts this week, is the ways in which a text reveals ideological oppression of a dominant economic class over subordinate classes. Subordinate is a word that means below. So the rich have subordinates, which are the poor, right? The businesses have the CEO that makes millions, and then they have the workers that make thousands. That's the idea, okay? You want to know whether the text reflects or resists this ideology? Do the 3 texts resist the idea that this is a good thing or a bad thing? Okay, does the text affirm or resist bourgeoisie values? Now, that word right there, bourgeoisie, it's the idea of the rich, okay? That is a fancy French word for the rich. The word for kind of the lower classes, which is in my PowerPoint, is proletariat. These are terms that are kind of used in political conversation, political discourse, political writing, and they are words that if you can bring into your writing, that's great. Now, as you work through these texts, I would love to see you kind of play with these ideas and play with these terms and try to introduce them in terms of your analysis. Now, additionally, right down here is a really important thing in terms of kind of the Diamond as Big as the Ritz short story. It says that Marxist literary criticism often shares with feminist criticism. That's what we're going to be doing in weeks 5 and 6, is looking at feminist criticism. In The Diamond as Big as the Ritz, there is a character named Kismine. I want you to think about, as you read this text, her role as a woman in this text. What is the writer essentially arguing about women? Are they oppressed? Are they separated from kind of positions of power? Just something to think about. Not that important this week, but it could be interesting down the line and used in our course down the line. Okay, so in terms of this document, that's really all you need to know. Is these 2 terms right here are going to be important throughout the class, and I want you to kind of keep that in mind. Now, going to the second document, we have Marxist literary theory. This document is several pages long. We don't need all of this. I'm going to show you exactly what you need. Okay, you need the definition of Marxism. It's a cultural theory that embodies a set of social, economic, and political ideas that its followers believe will enable them to interpret and change the world. Marxism believes that essentially, or Marxist criticism demands that we look at these texts as a way of understanding, or looking at politics as a way of understanding the world. All right, the tenets of Marxism, these are the important elements here, is that one's value is based on labor. So essentially the idea is that in our world, we value what we value what a human can produce, right? If you produce a car, you are contributing to the world by making cars. It's part of the reason we don't always value literature, right? A poet, for instance, we're parts of our society would say, oh, well, what are you really making? I hope that you guys aren't saying that. But that's something that parts of our society are saying. People that build houses, those are, they're doing a very important thing for society. It's this idea that labor and value are related. Economics determine all social actions and institutions. It's this idea that in Marxism and Marxist theory, it's an idea that the rich, middle, poor decide how every institution, a college, police systems and institution, politics, even the way our stores are designed is based on economics. The kinds of cities that, have Trader Joe's are different than the kinds of cities that have food for less. And that's an economic issue in a lot of ways. The third one is class struggle, and this is the most important one. Class struggle is the basic pattern in history. So in a Marxist kind of train of thought, it's the idea that the struggle between the haves and the have-nots is the most important driving force behind every single thing in society. So keep that in mind. The last 2, you don't really need to focus on too much for our class, but it's this idea that power will be seized through revolution of the working class. And lastly, there will be an establishment of a classless society, which kind of comes back to my discussion question for this week, which is, hey, is that even possible? Is it even possible to have a society where, there is not a poor and there is not a rich? Is that even within the realm of possibility? Now you have some historical stuff here. You don't really need that too much right now. Where I want to go down is I do want you to have kind of a general understanding of these systems. Feudalism, we don't live in that kind of world. It's aristocrats versus peasants, just not our way our society's built. You need to know that we are a capitalistic society, right? So you look at these two terms here. Okay, once again, you have bourgeoisie and proletariat, middle class and working class. It's this idea that they are always conflicting. And when we use the word middle class, it means something a little different than what it means in 2020. It's the idea of kind of, once again, haves versus have-nots. The middle class, upper class, they control the modes of production. They control businesses. The proletariat, they're the workers, okay? You need to keep that in mind in understanding these texts. We have communism. You guys know about that. I don't think you need any of this. You don't need any of this. I would like you to at least look at these terms here, just kind of understand the general ideas within this kind of literary theory. You do need these words right here. Keep those in mind. Classism, commodification, hegemony, and ideology. Commodification is the idea that everything in society becomes something to be bought, something to be kept, something to be saved and valued. Okay, so that is probably the most important term here. It'll help you understand diamond as big as the Ritz. Alright, now the bottom is where I really want to talk about. As you work on the writing task this week, you get to play with ideas. English 1C, I'm building in a way where you get to explore the things that you want to explore. These questions are the questions that you should be asking yourself as you read. You're not answering them, it's not an assignment. But if you want to understand, what am I supposed to be getting out of these texts? What am I supposed to be doing with these texts? You're supposed to be answering these questions internally and then putting them to writing. So keep that in mind. All right, so these two documents, that's kind of the elements that I want you to capture. Lots of interesting stuff here, lots of interesting text. Now, if we go to the literary analysis sample paper, next week you will have an essay due. You will also be completing a midterm that is entirely multiple choice and covers my lectures, captures my PowerPoints, the literature we've read, etc. Now, the literary analysis sample paper, I gave you the prompt last week. It is in the week 2 module, but you have a sample right here. All right. You also have some kind of general understanding or general directions in terms of what a literary analysis paper is. Do not forget this document. Make sure that you read it. There are a couple things in the sample I don't love, just myself being picky. Please don't use these kind of huge block quotes right here. If you go back to this page, it's kind of awkward the way it's set up, but it's like, it's him bringing in a quote right here, and he puts it in a giant block quote. Don't cite like that, please. Cite in the way that you learned in English 1A and English 1B, okay? But this is a great example of what a literary analysis is. It's on a completely unrelated topic. It's about masculinity. Our first essay is focusing on ethnicity and perhaps class, so it's not the same topic. But it is there for you and to kind of help you out, okay? Last things that I want to talk to you about this week. As I said, we have our itinerary. You have your documents, 2 nonfiction texts, 3 documents, 3 short stories. If I were you, I would probably read The Lottery first, then The Happy Prince, and finish with The Diamond as Big as the Ritz. That is our pretty much our primary text this week. It's quite long, about 30 pages, so keep that in mind. Get working early in the week if you can. All right, everything else is in the PowerPoint, you guys. There's a writing assignment, discussion board. I have been loving, and I mean it, loving the discussion board posts. I've been leaving comments on most of your posts, so keep that in mind. I've been providing some feedback for you on your writing assignment from last week. I will be providing more feedback in this upcoming week. I've been super happy that some of you have reached out to me and said, hey, I really enjoy these texts. That makes me extremely happy, and especially considering a lot of the things happening in the world right now. And I continue to hope that you will enjoy where we go from here. As always, please reach out to me if you have any questions, and I am always here to help you. Take care of yourselves. Keep safe. Make sure that you are wearing a mask wherever you go, and supporting our fellow men and women in terms of everything that's happening in our society right now. Have a great week.